On the congested streets of Manhattan, a billionaire had just emerged from a luxurious high-rise when suddenly a young girl bumped into him and darted away. In just a second, he paused, reached into his pocket, and was startled to discover that his wallet was missing. Anger surged through him as he took off after the girl through the bustling streets. They ran until she stumbled into an alley and fell, forced to stop. As he approached and finally saw her up close, he was stunned to discover a truth that brought tears to his eyes. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell me, where are you listening from? And don't forget to subscribe because tomorrow I have a surprise waiting for you. Beneath the jagged shadows of skyscrapers, Liam Smith steps out of a marble lobby, his navy suit sharp, his polished leather shoes gleaming under the afternoon sun. He adjusts his cufflinks, smooths the lapel, checks the time on his watch, a precise, meticulous habit. Control in every gesture, control in every breath. And then it happens. A girl, no more than 12, bumps into him and disappears into the crowd, a fleeting shadow. In that instant, Liam's hand shoots into his pocket. His wallet is gone. Emptiness. Anger, sharp and immediate, surges through him, a hot pulse in his chest. He calls out. His voice cuts through the clamor of taxis, the murmurs of pedestrians, the metallic clang of construction nearby. Hey! Stop! No response. And he moves. Liam's long strides take him past coffee carts and impatient lines of yellow cabs, weaving through the relentless pulse of the city. The heat rises from the asphalt, carrying the tang of exhaust and distant food carts, sweat and metal and urgency all mixed together. He sees her ahead, a small figure darting between legs, bouncing off the sidewalk's uneven cracks, nimble, fast, and intent on escape. The crowd swallows her. He presses forward, ignoring stares and muttered curses. Every second matters. Every footstep counts. He rounds a corner. She disappears into a narrow alley. A dead end. Liam slows. The rhythm of his heartbeat echoes in his ears. He takes stock, eyes scanning the grimy walls, slick with rainwater and shadows that stretch too long. And then he notices something, the determination in her posture, the way her shoulders carry a weight far too heavy for her age. She's not running for fun. She's running for survival. And before he can act, before he can make the first decision, a thought hits him, sharper than anger. Who is she? And what drives her to steal in this city of impossible contrasts, where wealth and desperation brush past each other every day but rarely touch? Liam steps into the alley. The air is hotter here, thick with the smell of garbage, damp bricks, the faint tang of iron and rust. He moves cautiously, every sense alert. One wrong step, one miscalculation, and she could be gone. This chase is no longer just about a wallet. Something bigger pulses in the air, something unspoken. And Liam, billionaire investor, accustomed to controlling everything from markets to mergers, feels the first pang of uncertainty creep in. For the first time today, he is not in control. And that's when the girl turns. The girl freezes for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Liam to close the distance, but not long enough to surrender. Her eyes, dark, alert, far too aware for someone her age, flick toward him, scanning for escape routes, any way out of the alley that has now become a trap. He slows, matching her pace, careful not to scare her into bolting blindly. The city's chaos seems to shrink around them here, the distant horns muffled, the buzz of life fading into the walls that rise like silent sentinels. Liam studies her closely, the dirt on her worn jacket, the holes in her sneakers, the way her fingers clutch something tightly against her chest. He knows it's his wallet, but there's something else there, some weight that isn't his. "Give it back," he says, voice controlled, sharp, but not loud. "I don't want to hurt you." She doesn't respond. Instead, she shifts her weight, preparing to run again, but Liam sees a hesitation. She's tired. Not just physically, her body is lean, hardened from running and hiding, but her eyes carry exhaustion, a fatigue that runs deeper than the day's heat or the city's concrete. She's carrying more than stolen money. She's carrying responsibility. The alley twists ahead, a narrow gap between two abandoned buildings, slick with moss and rain residue. She darts forward, and he follows, long strides eating the distance. Short, calculated bursts. She stumbles once, her sneakers skidding on wet cement. Liam's hand hovers instinctively, ready to catch her if she falls. She recovers, shaking her head, determination blazing in her gaze. Her small size is deceptive, her speed and agility have kept her ahead for now. Liam notices the details that tell him who she is: a small bracelet frayed at the clasp, smudges of ink on her hands, a faint cough that she quickly stifles. She is not just a thief, she is someone surviving something far heavier than a chase through city streets. He thinks of the wealth he controls: bank accounts, private jets, a penthouse with a view over all of Manhattan. And yet, here he is, running after a child who knows more about necessity than he does about life. Control. Power. Money. All meaningless against someone's will to protect what matters. They burst from the alley into a street lined with rusted fire escapes and overflowing trash bins. The noise of the city floods back, the screech of tires, the chatter of pedestrians, the metallic clang of construction, but it no longer disorients him. It sharpens his focus. She rounds a corner, and instinct pushes him faster. He's precise, calculating each turn, predicting where she will go, almost thinking like her. She ducks into a side street, narrow, barely wide enough for a car. Liam sees it in an instant: the broken bottles on the curb, the puddles reflecting the gray sky above, the uneven pavement that could slow her down. He anticipates her steps. He matches them. Closer. Almost there. And then she stops. A glance over her shoulder, sharp and fleeting. Her chest heaves. Sweat dampens her hair. Her small hands curl into fists. Liam slows to a walk. He doesn't need to close the distance physically, he wants to give her space, to see why she's running. She looks like every child who's had to grow up too fast, every child who's been left to fend for themselves in a city that turns its back on those who need help the most. Liam sees it now, not just her desperation, but the intelligence that survival has forced into her. There is planning here, strategy, but also fear. And something else: hope. She doesn't speak, but he hears it anyway, the unspoken story that weighs more than any stolen wallet could. And in that moment, Liam understands that this chase isn't about theft. It's about something much larger. Something he hasn't yet named, but something that will define everything that comes next. And then, instinctively, he takes one last cautious step toward her, ready to meet whatever comes, prepared to learn the truth hidden behind those dark, wary eyes. The girl doesn't run this time. She stands at the edge of the street, chest heaving, small hands pressed against the wallet she still clutches. Her eyes dart toward him, wary, searching. Liam slows, feeling the tension in the space between them. He doesn't step closer, not yet. He doesn't want to scare her into fleeing again. Why? He finally asks, voice steady but softer now. Why take it? Her lips part, and she swallows hard. A cough escapes, quick and quiet, as if trying to hide her vulnerability. She glances at him, then down at the wallet, then back up. I needed it, she stammers, voice trembling, not loud, but enough for him to hear. For my mom, she's sick. She doesn't have the medicine. She can't get it, not here. Not for us. The words hit him with the weight of a physical blow. Liam's chest tightens, and for the first time since the chase began, the anger he felt seems small, petty. He looks at her again, really looks, the dirt on her jacket, the holes in her sneakers, the tired line of her jaw. She's no ordinary child. She's a fighter, carrying a burden he could barely imagine. He kneels slightly, lowering himself to meet her gaze. Sick, he prompts, carefully, letting her speak without pressure. Her eyes fill, but she blinks back tears, stubborn, determined. Cardiac, my mom, she's in the hospital sometimes. The medicine, it costs more than we have. I tried everything. I had to. Liam swallows. The city around them seems to fall away, the noise dimming into irrelevance. Coffee carts, taxis, construction, all of it becomes background. All that remains is her, small, fragile, and brave, holding a stolen wallet for a reason that suddenly makes the theft insignificant. He feels a strange unfamiliarity in his chest, empathy. Not pity, not charity, but understanding. Recognition. He realizes that no amount of wealth, no number of investments or deals, could have protected him from the vulnerability she faces daily. She is navigating a system that has failed her, a world built for people who can pay, while those who cannot are left to scramble and steal. Where is she? He asks quietly. Not a demand, not a judgment, just a question that carries genuine concern. The girl hesitates. She studies him, cautious, wary. But then she nods slowly. Home, apartment. She can't walk sometimes. She'll die without the medicine. Liam feels the words sink into him, each one like a hammer. His suit, his polished shoes, the office waiting for him, the city he dominates, they feel meaningless compared to the fragility in front of him. And suddenly, the chase doesn't feel like pursuit anymore. It feels like a call. A quiet resolve forms inside him. Anger is gone, replaced by a necessity he hasn't known in years. He will help. But not as a patron, not as a savior handing out coins. He will act with precision, with knowledge, with the skill his life has taught him, because for her mother, there is no time to waste. The girl studies him again, suspicion mingled with a tiny glimmer of hope. Liam extends his hand, not to take the wallet, not to scold, not to demand, but in trust. And in that small gesture, the first thread of connection forms between them, fragile but unbreakable. This is no longer a chase. It is the beginning of something neither of them expected, a journey into truth, survival, and the fragile human bonds that money cannot buy. Liam follows the girl, careful to match her cautious pace. The streets shift from crowded avenues to narrow, decaying side streets, buildings pressed together like tired sentinels, their paint peeling, windows streaked with grime. The air smells of damp concrete and something faintly metallic, a tang that makes him aware of every breath. He notices her shoes scraping against uneven pavement, the cautious way she steps over puddles, the small, deliberate cough she stifles each few seconds. Finally, they arrive at a building that seems to lean on its own weight, its fire escape rusted and sagging. The girl fumbles with the lock to a door, hands shaking. Liam doesn't intervene, he lets her lead. Inside, the apartment is a stark contrast to the city's polished surfaces. Peeling wallpaper, threadbare carpet, the hum of an aging radiator. The smell of antiseptic mixed with old food. And then he sees her mother. Angela lies on a narrow bed, face pale, chest rising and falling unevenly. Tubes snake into her arms, a small oxygen concentrator hisses quietly beside her. Her hands twitch involuntarily. Liam's first thought is clinical, tachycardia, arrhythmia, unstable cardiac rhythm, but then the human hits harder. Her daughter kneels beside her, brushing sweat-soaked hair from her mother's forehead, whispering words that do nothing to soothe. She won't last the week without her meds, the girl says, voice barely above a whisper. The insurance, we can't get it. Not without money. Not in time. Liam's mind races. He thinks of what he can do, contacts, connections, resources. His wealth, usually abstract numbers on a screen, now feels like something tangible, something that could change a life immediately if wielded correctly. But bureaucracy is relentless. Prescriptions can't be expedited. Insurance requires forms. The pharmacy has nothing in stock. Every step is a barrier, every system a wall. He kneels beside Angela, careful not to intrude. He checks the monitor beside her bed, heart rate erratic, blood pressure low, lips pale. Medications she has are barely enough to stabilize her, temporary fixes that will fail without the proper drug. He feels the weight of urgency pressing down, a clock ticking faster than it should. I can help, he says, voice quiet but firm. I know how. The girl's eyes widen, wary. No one ever does. They She stops, swallowing. They just look away. Liam doesn't reply. He moves to his phone, calling contacts he has rarely used outside of boardrooms and conferences, medical supply specialists, pharmaceutical representatives, connections in Sweden for experimental cardiac treatments. Each call is precise, calculated, time-sensitive. He negotiates access to a drug that isn't available locally, coordinating logistics while keeping one eye on Angela's deteriorating condition. Hours stretch thin. Ambulances are summoned, paramedics arrive, assessments made. Liam is at every step, translating the clinical language, arranging fast-tracked procedures. He watches as Angela's heart rhythm stabilizes temporarily with intravenous medication, but the temporary measure cannot hold. Liam realizes the only chance lies in the experimental treatment he's secured, a drug with strict international protocols, a narrow window. The girl hovers near her mother's bed, trembling. Liam notices her small hands clench and unclench, her knuckles white. "We're going to make it," he says, not as a promise, but as a plan, an active, deliberate action toward survival. "You both are going to get through this." She nods slowly, tears threatening, but she keeps them back. Exhaustion lines her young face, but her resolve remains. Liam feels a strange kinship with her, the same drive to protect, to act, to navigate impossible systems with whatever tools are at hand. Time blurs, paramedics wheel Angela onto a gurney, monitors beep, nurses consult. Liam coordinates with the Swedish provider, arranging for expedited transport of the experimental drug. The bureaucracy is inflexible, the process grueling, but he leverages his expertise, his connections, and his decisiveness. He calculates risk, assesses protocols, makes every choice with precision. And in the chaos, he notices the quiet moments, the girl brushing her mother's hair back, whispering encouragement, Angela's shallow breath as she clings to life. Each small detail sharpens his focus. Failure is not an option. By nightfall, the experimental treatment is administered. Angela's vitals begin to stabilize slowly, the life-or-death pivot achieved, but not without cost. She remains weak, partially paralyzed, vulnerable. Liam watches, knowing the battle is won but the war for recovery has only begun. In that moment, he understands something profound: wealth, power, and influence mean nothing if they are not used with intent, with care, with responsibility. And he also understands that trust, fragile, earned, cautious, must be handled as delicately as the human heart itself. The crisis has not ended. The fight for Angela's survival continues. But for the first time, Liam feels connected, accountable, not to a market, not to a boardroom, but to real lives, to a child, to a mother, to the fragile humanity that surrounds them. The experimental drug arrives just as dawn begins to streak the city with pale light. Liam stands at Angela's bedside, watching the nurses prepare the infusion, monitoring the equipment with meticulous attention. His suit is rumpled from hours of frantic action, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, but his focus is absolute. The girl kneels beside her mother, hands shaking slightly as she adjusts the oxygen mask, her eyes wide and alert, silently counting the beats between her mother's shallow breaths. Liam notices her trembling fingers and does not speak. Words are unnecessary here. Each action, each precise movement, carries the weight of life itself. The infusion begins. Monitors beep steadily. The paramedics step back. Nurses document, adjust, calculate. Liam watches the numbers climb, fall, stabilize, and climb again. Minutes stretch like hours. Each second is measured, deliberate, crucial. Angela's chest rises more evenly now, faint color returning to her cheeks. She sighs, shallow but steady, and for the first time in days, there is a glimmer of relief in the room. The girl exhales quietly, and a single tear slips down her cheek, unashamed, unhidden. Liam feels something inside him loosen, a tension he hadn't realized he was holding: hope. Then the legal complication arrives. A police officer knocks on the hospital door, insisting that the girl is in custody for theft. Liam steps forward, calm, precise, every word measured. She did what any child in her position would have done to save her mother's life. Arresting her now won't fix anything. It will only hurt her mother. I will take responsibility. The officer hesitates, glancing between Liam, the girl, and the monitors showing Angela's still fragile recovery. Liam doesn't waver. His wealth, his influence, his reputation, these are tools, and he wields them not as shields, but as protection. She stays, he says firmly. She stays until her mother is stable. Time passes in slow, deliberate increments. Angela's heart stabilizes fully under the treatment. She is alive, but not unscathed. Partial paralysis from the cardiac event limits her mobility. Liam observes, notes details, prepares for the next stage: rehabilitation, therapy, care. Every procedure, every adjustment, every consultation is conducted with a level of precision that mirrors the financial deals he once obsessed over, but this time, the stakes are human, immediate, irreplaceable. The girl rests her head against her mother's shoulder, exhaustion finally overtaking her vigilance. Liam steps back, watching the scene unfold. He feels a profound shift: the chase, the wallet, the anger, it all led here, to this fragile, imperfect victory. A life saved, a trust earned, a barrier dismantled. And in the quiet between heartbeats, between monitors and whispered instructions, he realizes the cost of wealth, the emptiness it brings when used only for control or accumulation. Here, in this small hospital room, he understands connection, responsibility, and the human capacity to act decisively when lives depend on it. Angela is safe, for now. The girl is protected. And Liam, billionaire investor, accustomed to certainty and power, has discovered something far more complex and essential: the measure of a life is not in what you hold, but in what you do when holding is impossible, when only action can preserve what matters. The hospital quiets as afternoon sunlight filters through half-open blinds, casting slanted patterns across pale walls. Angela rests in her hospital bed, small movements cautious, deliberate. Her partial paralysis limits her mobility, but her eyes shine with recognition and relief. The girl sits beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her mother's forehead, fingers lingering as if memorizing every line, every scar, every fragile heartbeat. Liam watches them. He no longer feels the sting of anger or the thrill of a chase. Instead, a quiet satisfaction settles in, a deep, measured warmth that doesn't announce itself with fanfare, but lingers steadily, like a hearth in a home long unlit. He arranges for them to move into his estate, not as a display of charity, but as a shared space where recovery can happen. Daily routines are simple, intimate: shared meals, gentle exercises, physical therapy sessions. Liam, once accustomed to solitary breakfasts in penthouse silence, now eats with two lives entwined with his own, listening, observing, learning. The girl's laughter returns slowly, brittle at first, then stronger, as she navigates corridors, helping her mother with small tasks. Angela participates as she can, her hands guided carefully, each movement a triumph. Liam notices the details that tell him they are healing, not just physically, but emotionally. Trust is forming, fragile but unshakable. Evenings bring quiet domestic rituals: planting small trees in the garden, choosing books together, naming objects that now belong to all three of them. Words of gratitude are exchanged in subtle ways: a look, a nod, a pause long enough to carry meaning. Liam sees that redemption is not found in wealth alone, but in commitment, presence, and consistent care. He understands something essential: family is not only blood, but action, protection, and shared vulnerability. In helping them, he has been helped too: emptiness filled not by money, but by connection, by responsibility that matters, by witnessing courage and resilience firsthand. And as night falls, the three sit quietly on the estate balcony. The city hums in the distance, indifferent, relentless, but here, in this small circle, life has settled into a rhythm of belonging. Angela's hand rests lightly on her daughter's, the girl leaning against Liam's arm. A moment ordinary to any passerby, extraordinary to them, a silent acknowledgement of survival, trust, and the fragile beauty of a life remade. Liam breathes slowly, deeply, knowing the journey is not over, but feeling, at last, that they are together, that they have found a kind of permanence beyond wealth, beyond power, beyond chance. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons, because moments like these remind us that human connection can transform even the loneliest hearts.